I'm Patrick Spence, the CEO of Sonos, and I'm panicked about people listening to bad audio.
Jensen.
Hey, Mr. Lindsonian. How you doing?
What's going on?
Not much.
It's raining.
I know. It's never
We don't
rains
even have to tell which day. It's just a rare day. People can look it up and go, when did it last rain in Arizona?
This is one of the 7 days a year we have rain in Arizona.
Yeah. I think we should get a tax rebate.
I think we should too.
Okay. I don't have a segue, but I have a lot of funny jokes. The sound, Knut, how important is sound to you?
Sound to me is alpha and omega.
Yeah, is it important though?
Yes.
Okay, listen. Keep it simple. I'm not that bright. So
Sorry.
alpha, omega, I think you were joking that it's important.
No. That's actually
and as
something
we sit here and I can hear my hair grow in this perfectly silent room with a live guest. Is he allowed to clap?
He can clap if he wants to.
Is he can do an ah?
He can do it now.
Can he do the wave?
Ooh.
So we now are having live guests, just people that just drop by. Now that we have an office, we're allowed to have drop-bys, people. If you can find us on the internet and feel like you want to come by and listen to a podcast. So today's all about sound. I've learned how important it is.
Speaking of that, can you speak up a little bit, please?
Yeah. Yes, Herr Knut Jensen. The sound, super important. The other thing that's super important is elegance. You know, you've built this elegant studio. And, I talk about fashology all the time.
Yes.
One of those companies is Restoration Hardware, which is and obviously Apple. But one company that's, I think right now, it's, a $3.5 billion hardware meets audio meets technology meets software company, Sonos. And today our guest is the CEO of Sonos.
Excellent.
Patrick Spence. And I know you're a Sonos fan.
I am.
Because, well, you're more of an IKEA fan, which means you're cheap and Scandinavian. But Sonos had an idea for that. They created, and we'll talk about this, they created Sonos Inside. Which
yes, I did.
Did you know you were buying Sonos when you bought your IKEA
did, actually, yes. I
knockoff?
Did. I would not have bought it if it didn't say Sonos on it.
You just like putting stuff together. Did you have to put the speakers together? Because they came from, how many pieces were in the...
I was missing a screw. Could you believe it? No. They come readily assembled.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the hardware business, the music business, the sound business, going up against giants. We're going to talk about Blackberry because Patrick, our guest, the CEO of Sonos, who grew up in Canada, who is the only CEO in the free world from Sarnia, Ontario. I think it's Ontario, Sarnia, Ontario, which... life was fun in Toronto, and we just made fun of people from Sarnia. But once you went to college, and we went to the same college together, Patrick and I, which is the best business school in Canada, Canada to you, Canada's very small, so we make fun of the rural towns, and then we go to college, and we're with the rural people. And Patrick has defied the odds. He went from Sarnia to Western, which school I went to, then went to Blackberry, in Waterloo.
All right.
Find that on a map, Knut. And really one of the great stories of all time, the growth story, which hopefully he'll dive into a few minutes. And then I want to talk about building a $3.5 billion business in a world of giants, right? You got Spotify, you got Apple with their Google, you've got just the giants trying to compete. And so, which leads to obviously the story about IKEA and Sonos Inside, et cetera, and how to run a $3.5 billion hardware audio company in 2022. So let's get Patrick on the phone.
Will do.
Patrick!
Howard.
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. So Sarnia.
Yes. The metropolis.
What's the population today?
About 75,000.
Oh, so it's really small. And when you were a kid, was Sarnia booming? Was it 80,000?
It was around this. It was around the same size. I think at that point, some of the petroleum industry was probably in better shape, so maybe it was more booming from an economic perspective. But all these towns reinvent themselves, and there's a lot of people that have moved from the big city of Toronto to retire in Sarnia. So it's become a bit of a retirement hotspot being on the lake. And so it's not like Arizona.
Which lake?
Lake Huron.
Lake Huron. And so what is it about Lake Huron? The glow of the petroleum after all these years at sunset?
Hey, it's north of the valley, so it's all the clean water. It doesn't become dirty until it comes down through the St. Clair River, and then Windsor and Detroit get to enjoy the post-petroleum water.
So you're young, you're 45?
47.
Yeah, so 47. So I'm trying to think. And was Sarnia the butt of jokes when you went to Western? Like, tell me what it's like going from a small town to Western, because Western, London, Ontario is a bigger town, but was it intimidating? Like, were Toronto people nice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I lived in, so I lived in Kitchener, London, and Sarnia growing up. And I would say there definitely were the Toronto and Montreal types at Western that thought they had a little bit of superiority to the small town, right, people. And so we definitely got into that. But it wasn't, you quickly gel. And I think the power of being in college is you're part of that community and together. And quickly it's about, the other universities, right? And being against the other universities and unifying for that reason. So, and I played a lot of sports. So I actually played varsity volleyball at Western. And sports is like a big part of my background. And I think, why I'm a CEO today is, I really took a lot of lessons from working on teams and leading successful teams. And, a lot of what I put to action every day is a lot more, what I learned growing up in sports than necessarily even what I learned at business school.
So it was founded by John McFarlane. Is he chairman now?
No. So when John handed the reins to me, he stepped away and I said exactly like you would expect. I said, John, just, be chairman. He still owned 15% of the company at that point. Wow. And he said, no way. He said, Patrick, like this always happens in these transitions. It goes wrong because there's going to be a whole bunch of changes you want to make and I won't agree. And it's just not going to be healthy for anybody. And so he said, it is yours. And Howard, he walked out the door, and if I called him right now, he would absolutely answer and help in any way possible.
What would it say?
Not quite.
Johnny be gone? Would it be Johnny McLent?
Maybe Johnny be gone. Yeah, exactly. And so, and if anybody from Sonos actually had called him, even the day after, he's like, talk to Patrick. And because he had lived through a bad transition when he built software.com and merged that with OpenWave.
Wow,
John knew what a good, So John knew what a bad transition looked like for CEO. And I can't thank him enough for, that kind of clean transition because he was right. Like at our first board meeting, I was making a ton of changes and things that he and I definitely would have fought over. And so John, built this thing. You would not find a better person to start a company and get it off the ground when everybody says it's not possible. John is the person you want there, like breaking through some of all the barriers and the naysayers. And I can't thank him enough for the way he handed the reins to me.
And what's he doing now?
He's helping some startups in town, hiking a lot, super healthy.
In Santa Barbara?
Sleeping. Yep, in Santa Barbara. Yep.
Got it. And so he doesn't call you at 2:00 in the afternoon to say, what up?
Nope.
Okay.
No, we had dinner a couple of weeks ago that our wives coordinated, and we get together from time to time. And again, I think if I called him right now and I needed help with something, he'd be there. But other than that, he stays out of it.
And so did they recruit you from Blackberry, from RIM?
They did. Yeah. So John did specifically. We were vacationing. We were living in England at this point. So we were living in London. So a little different than London, Ontario. And we were actually on vacation. And so in the south of France with my two young kids and my wife was, I had all these moments where I had to do calls and Blackberry was pretty 24/7. And so she's, I said, okay, the founder of Sonos wants to have a chat. and we're on vacation, and my wife was kind of like, okay, here we go. I said, it'll just be an hour. John and I talked for 4 hours that day, and then the next day we spoke for another 4 hours because we really bonded over this vision. Obviously at that point, BlackBerry was going through some challenging times, and we really bonded over this idea of what it's like to build a company the right way and for the long term. And John having gone through what he did and me having gone through what I did at BlackBerry, we just really, took, I'd say, like a different approach to the way we'd want to build a company and the value we'd put in quality and kind of the future of software and hardware in a smart kind of home type of world. And so I met, and then I met him in person and the rest of the team here in Santa Barbara, and I knew something special was happening, and I knew I could put a lot of what I learned at BlackBerry, both good and bad, to work at Sonos and help build the company from there. And I had Sonos at that point. I was selling, tons and tons of Sonos to friends and family because I was raving about it all the time. And so it's been a pretty interesting journey.
So hang on. But how did he know you from BlackBerry to Sonos?
Oh, he didn't. Somebody
recruiter?
had, some recruiter. It was Jim Citron that was leading the search. And so and I didn't talk to anybody. Steve Jobs wanted to talk, to have somebody lead iPhone sales. And I mean, if you would have cut me, I bled BlackBerry. So I said, nope, I'm not interested. I look at Jim and Mike as two of the finest entrepreneurs in Canadian history. I grew up inside the company. And so, I really did not talk to many of the recruiters in my whole career, but this was post the Jim and Mike transition. I had a different view of where BlackBerry needed to go than the new CEO that came in. And so I was open to having that conversation with John.
I mean, I know this about Sonos, but I got to go back in time. You had a BlackBerry, didn't you?
No, I never had one.
What?
Yeah,
What?
no.
What?
No, I went straight to a Nokia
'cause you're
61E or
Norwegian.
something like. Yeah, some Finnish product. Who knows? Yeah.
Wow. So in the Western Hemisphere, I think that's where we're from. I'm not good at geography. Western. So in the real world, Canute, there's something that was called the BlackBerry. And I remember writing
Christine had one.
on my
wife
blog,
did.
and I can't delete it, is like, you will pry this from my dead cold hand. So I bled BlackBerry. And I bled BlackBerry not because of Canada, Patrick, I didn't know you, but I bled BlackBerry because it changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
It really, you couldn't imagine life getting better. Life couldn't get better than whacking out a pin.
Yep, pin, exactly. That's where it started. Yep.
Or StockTwits, it was started on a BlackBerry. I sent Fred Wilson, $RI, when I started StockTwits,
Yeah.
when Twitter started, there was no iPhone. It was BlackBerry.
That's right.
So what do you remember as the first app that blew your... I mean, I got to go way back in BlackBerry, and who cares who's listening to this, and we'll wrap it up and create separate sections for Sonos, but I got a lot of questions here. Not how they fucked it up. And do you guys still own the Ottawa team? Do they still own the hockey team?
No, Jim tried to buy, he was trying to buy the Pittsburgh Penguins, actually. And then there was some rumor he was going to move it and all sorts of stuff, but no.
So distraction,
But
which has held me back as well. So you pry it from my dead cold hands. That's what I lived on. I remember, and this is what helped me start StockTwits, is the brokers. I'm coming from the financial world. That's how insider trading went down on pins, not BlackBerry's fault. That's how people inside brokerages who were inside, who couldn't use email, or pin was how stuff was getting done.
So that was that.
Did you guys know that inside BlackBerry?
We didn't know.
Well, you didn't build it for that.
I don't know if
use.
anything illegal was happening, Howard. Come on. But look, I was the one. So fresh, out of school, joined BlackBerry. And the thing, we didn't have BlackBerry at that point, right? So I joined pre-BlackBerry. There were 150 people. And but we had this thing called the interactive pager. And my first big kind of assignment was to work with Fidelity Investments. And we created an app called Instant Broker, which allowed you to trade stocks over the interactive pager. So we had an API, we built that, we worked closely with them. So that was the first thing I did. And what that led to then was me saying, hey, like we were big believers in the whole Jeffrey Moore kind of crossing the chasm, like all of that. And in there's this theory of what's called the bowling alley. So you go knock down different verticals one at a time. And with the vertical I saw that could use this the most were the banks and brokerages. So what I did was fly every week from Waterloo, Ontario, would drive to Toronto Airport, and I would fly to New York City, and just blew my mind, right? Just a guy from little town in Canada, and go and call on the banks and brokerages there and really work closely with Dennis, our CFO, and Jim, our CEO, who knew like a lot of the key people there. And I would go, one of the first things I did was I would take Blackberries and I would go and set up as many, executives in banking as I could and in trading, and then set up their secretary as well so that the two of them could communicate. And that was the trick, like getting the two of them to communicate. And at this point,
did they all get the aha moment just like Idiot Howard?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally, Howard. Like totally. So then what I did was, at one point, I think I had maybe 200 or 300 people running this desktop program at Merrill Lynch. And then their IT people were like, what in the world is going on? And so I got into this crazy negotiation around, them trying to land an enterprise deal, our first big one, over 1,000 units, if you can believe it at that point. 1,000 units, crazy to think about now because it's such a small number. But, and there I am like in New York, and they've got these hardcore purchasing people trying to negotiate these deals. And I'm like, well, look, there's already 300 of your top executives using this product. Do you really want me to turn it off? And so it was very funny because like the tables kind of turned. And then we did this big deal with Merrill, 1,500 units, I think ended up being like the number. We put a press release out there and our stock just spiked. This is back in like I want to say 2000. It might have been 99, 2000. And Steve Milinovich was the CIO at Merrill, and he came in and he wanted to set a whole new tone for the organization. So he wanted to deploy Blackberries, kind of throughout the organization. He'd just come in, I think,
so
from
they
like GE
were
or
okay
something.
with it, even though they weren't worried about SEC stuff, huh?
Well, they were. We had to go through all of the security audit stuff and all of this kind of thing. And I think we did end up putting a feature in the BlackBerry Enterprise server that they would run eventually that would allow them to turn off the pin-to-pin or track it or something like that. So I think, I think we did end up having to do that.
So they had thought through that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, you were at the beginning of some historical technological stuff.
Yeah.
So coming from Canada, did it feel different? Because, did it feel like it was possible or less? How did it feel inside Canada doing this and seeing this? Was it kind of hard to believe? Did the founders have that kind of strut that they understood that this was going to be a global empire? I think at peak, what'd you get, 80 billion, 100 billion?
80 billion, I think, in market cap was the peak, 20 billion in sales at one point. We did have that, we did have that swagger, I'd say, to some degree, maybe because we just didn't know better, Howard, small town, Waterloo, Ontario. And we're just like, hey, we've got this thing. We went out hard. Jim and Mike were very confident. And, it was kind of us against the world. And even in paging, kind of pre-BlackBerry, everybody was like, there's no way you can top Motorola or Glen Eyre, these companies that are out there. And then we did the phone thing and everybody's like, there's no way you can take on Nokia, Motorola, Sony Ericsson, all these companies. And we just kind of kept our heads down and are like, no, we got this. And we were really powered by that internship program at the University of Waterloo, right? Which is, such a gem of a engineering program and some really smart and determined people. And it was an incredible ride and we just kept going. We just kept piling on it and driving it. And I think it just shows the power. I mean, I talked to a bunch of Canadians last week at the C100 and I said, sometimes in Canada, we just get in our own way because we don't believe it can happen.
Correct.
And that was never an issue for us. We were like, no way, why not us? Why can't we take this on? We've got this and we figure out, we have something here. Let's ride this thing and let's really drive it. And I think today, people like Toby and Harley at Shopify, I think they look at it the same way, which is why not us? And why can't we go build this into a, huge global company and do it from Canada? There's really no reason you can't.
And at peak, you're running all of sales?
Yeah. So I was running all of sales and regional marketing at that point, living in London. So I was doing that from London after I ran Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Yeah, that was a trip after, having started with 150 people and fresh out of school, and 14 years later, to be leading all of that and, playing a instrumental role in trying to land all these deals with the mobile carriers and a huge company, everybody knowing the brand. So yeah, amazing, amazing.
Obviously, at the beginning, you knew who the giants were: Motorola, Sony, Ericsson, Nokia. You could sneak up in a way because, like Canute, these guys were on their StarTex and their Nokia, whatever the famous Nokia phone was. So what was the big mistake, do you think, in hindsight? Obviously Apple, but as a company, what was the moment when it tipped the other way?
Well, I think so a few things. I'm a big believer that it's more about what you do to yourself than what others do to you.
Sure.
And so I think Jim Collins, talks about that quite a bit. And look, like when the iPhone came out, there's all this mythology that, we didn't view it as a threat, all those kind of things. That wasn't true at all. And in fact, I would say that we over-rotated because Verizon wrote us a huge check to create the first touchscreen BlackBerry as a result of the iPhone being exclusive to AT&T. And so we created this product called the Storm, BlackBerry Storm.
Yeah, I remember the Storm.
Which we rushed to market because of the pressure from Verizon and pressure from Apple. And basically, over the course of Black Friday that year, 10 years of building up our reputation as reliable, and very focused and like just, hard, we had so much hardcore love for the brand. We quickly threw that away by chasing what a competitor had done and chasing an opportunity and a big check from a mobile carrier, quite frankly. And so that was pretty pivotal. And then the other one, Howard, I tell you, is that we had, around that same time, we had 80 million daily active users for BlackBerry Messenger. And at that point, WhatsApp had less than 10. It might have been like even 5 million that they had. And we had BlackBerry Messenger working on iOS, Android, desktop computers as well.
So there was still a chance.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was a classic Innovators dilemma moment where we should have been pivoting to, or at least augmenting, the rest of our business at that point with an open BlackBerry Messenger platform that could have went from 80 million to, hundreds of millions, right, of instant messaging clients on all types of devices. And we had support from mobile carriers. They saw the threat from Apple with iMessage, all of this stuff. And so we were in a perfect position. And there was one faction inside the company, Jim and I, that were really pushing hard for this. And then on the other side, it was just classic Innovators dilemma of, no, we're hardware. Yeah. We want to do, we want to do hardware. If we just get to BlackBerry 10, we'll be fine. And it was already too late. And so those are two pivotal moments. And it's why I am highly paranoid and why I'm always thinking about, for Sonos, okay, we do these things today, right? We have a certain set of capabilities, but what we do today may not be the thing that we do in the future. Just like we should have pivoted, with BlackBerry to BBM, is we need to be thinking about other opportunities and kind of, expanding our vision in terms of what we might do in the future, what opportunities might present themselves to us. And so I think it's sad as a Canadian, as somebody that put their heart and soul into all of that. Yeah. But certainly I put those lessons, to work every single day.
What a lesson. I mean, so you basically have had 2 jobs. Not bad.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy in this day and age. I've been 25 years in tech and across 2 companies, which if you would have asked me, graduating, I would have thought, no way. They told us in school and everybody in the media at that time, you're going to have 10 different jobs and those kind of things. But I've really found that it's worthwhile to get in deep. I love what we build. It's complicated. It's hard. But, there's nothing like telling somebody that you work at Sonos, and it was this way at BlackBerry, and watching them light up and tell you their stories about the experiences they've had and how much they love it. And it takes a special people to build this kind of stuff where you're putting hardware and software together, dealing with all the supply chain nightmares, like all of these things. And so I feel very fortunate. It's super proud of like the 2 adventures that I've got to have so far.
Whew. So one last question before we switch to Sonos, because you basically, even though you go from an $80 billion company to probably a $2 to $3 billion in sales company now.
Well, yeah, we'll do 2 billion this year. When I joined Sonos, we were doing 200 million.
Yes, you've 10 times the sales, so that's magnificent in a world of giants, because the world has changed since '09 with Apple. So what would it take, because it's not going to be the government. Only Apple can screw Apple at this point. So what would it take as someone who's seen an empire tip? They just have so many protections. So I know this is pure speculation.
Yeah, they do. They do. And look, I think this is the biggest thing and why I testified at Congress and a bunch of things is, it was different. Like in the BlackBerry days, Microsoft and Qualcomm got together, created a company called Wireless Knowledge to destroy BlackBerry. But at that time, they still had a profit motive, right?
Microsoft
and they looked at it
really
and said,
was an evil fucking place.
And they said,
which is why Bill Gates now has a huge bump on his forehead. I think people, it's just. It's from talking into a mic at Congress all these years.
Competition, right? Competition still, when that happened, it was still, hey, there's a profit motive there. We've got to make money as we do this and go through it. And Howard, that's changed completely. Now, as we look at the way I look at it is that these big tech companies have figured out how to perfect monopoly, right? Which is using dominance in one area to cross-subsidize another area to suck all the oxygen out of the room. So an example I often use is the folks at Eero that were building these great Wi-Fi networking home things. Google just came out, copied what they were doing, undercut the price, and drove them right out of business. And they sold for, nothing to Amazon. All of the big tech companies are looking for those areas where anything could potentially threaten their monopoly in the future, and they just suck the air out of the room. And that's why, that's why we've been a little bit more vocal and standing up for innovation and smaller companies and startups, because look, there's part of me that believes that companies do atrophy, and over time, like there'll be disruption to some of those things, but we also learn. And if you look at these companies, they've learned really well how to use their kind of cash cow to go cross-subsidize other things and compete and kind of drive people out of business. And so, that is something that's on my mind all the time as we work through this. But we've shown an ability to innovate and continue to innovate, grow every year we've been in business. We got strong free cash flow, right? So we've built a good business. We hit escape velocity. But I think for a lot of companies and startups, I am worried that it's much harder for them to hit escape velocity in this day and age because, the big tech companies are looking at anything new that's coming up and just sucking all the oxygen out of the room. If something looks like it might have, a little bit of a flower blooming or a seed or something, right, that might become big in the future.
Well said, and I appreciate it, because it really is amazing. There's a small fry here talking to people like yourself and trying to put the pieces together for, the StockTwits community and people that follow me and just people who love investing. You're seeing it even with Facebook. It's like, we hated Facebook, and all that hate was probably ill-directed, because in the end, Apple was going to get them because they changed the ad rules and they control the pipe. And then even with Shopify, like it seemed like they were at escape velocity, and now because of Facebook, and I was reading Ben Stratechery about it, and it's like Shopify has to continue to move into other businesses themselves ahead of when they want to because of Apple and Facebook. So it's like the big have learned, and as much as I loved Apple, I'm starting to not like them because they are stifling. How do you get to the next level if Apple's just going to come for you? Everybody will want to sell before they have to take on Apple.
Well, and I think that's the other thing, right? So many companies that are built to flip, right, in this day and age, as opposed to built to really scale and take on the world. And that's why I really try to encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to be building. We would be so much better off as a society if we had thousands and thousands of companies with, a couple thousand employees versus, concentrating the kind of power we have in a few companies' hands. Yeah. There's half the number of public companies there were 20 years ago. I just don't think that's a good thing, right? For society over the long term, is that I think we need more new companies that are actually doing something, building something, and employing a lot more people. But I digress.
So to Sonos now, how do you think in a world where you have escape velocity or you have the trust of the public, but you're in this zone where if you're not indexed, and I don't know if you're in the index, I'm not aware. Are you in any S&P index or small cap index?
Russell 2000. Yeah,
okay,
we're
so
in
at
the
least you're
Russell
indexed.
2000. Yeah.
So if people want, I mean, if Betty Lou in the middle of the country decides she wants to own the Russell, at least she owns Sonos.
Yeah. Well, and we benefit a little bit from the whole Peter Lynch, mentality of people buying what they know, right? So we also know that we have shareholders that buy because they love the product and they've gone through their own journey. So for me, I'd say the big thing is keeping the organization focused and innovating. And so our pace of innovation has really picked up under my leadership. That was a big thing that John and I had kind of disagreed on. And so I've unleashed, I would say our engineering team, we've invested a lot more to be continuing to bring out new products on a more consistent basis. So we basically do at least 2 new products every single year. That builds on the system. Our existing customers buy more of those products, add them to their home. We get new customers because of those products. And so that is where we spend a lot of time. We also spend time thinking about like, what is the future of the business? And remember, 2/3 of our team is software, right? So we are the story of software eats audio. And so this is why it was important to do the IKEA partnership that you guys were talking about and put Sonos inside IKEA, because that was a chance to test new form factors that are more like furniture, right? Because they have lamps and now floor standing lamps and as well picture frames and a bunch of different areas.
Oh, so you can hide the speaker technology.
Exactly. You can hide it because of the software work we did, right? And so you can actually shape the sound in a room and you can escape from traditional speaker form factors, which is pretty cool as we think about the future. And so we also play in audio. We play in a $90 billion a year market, right? And we'll do $2 billion this year. So that gives us, as a company our size, a lot of runway, right?
That's your North Star,
many more
billions.
Billion. Yeah, exactly. And so that gives us a lot of room to run in terms of where we are. And it's one of those things where our core belief is that anybody buying audio products will want not to be trapped in a particular ecosystem, right? So if you buy the Google product or Amazon product or Apple product, they want to lock you into that ecosystem, right? But when it comes to buying something like ours that's going to last 10 or more years, you want to have the flexibility to, switch providers and do Spotify or do Apple Music or do Amazon Prime Music and switch amongst those. And so we have stayed very, very open on this, kind of the Switzerland, to make sure that we support all of the services that are out there and people could switch. And that's been a key differentiator against a lot of the big tech players. And then obviously, our service is easier. It's higher quality audio, like all of the things that have really resonated with our customers. And so I do think, we're in a good position. Like I said, we got up to like kind of a critical mass, if you will, escape velocity before the big tech players really jumped in as well. So that kind of enabled us to keep growing, keep innovating. And we have a strong balance sheet. So we have the fuel we need to both like acquire, but also drive organic growth as well.
But there were some tough times. I remember reading about Sonos all these years because it's rooting for the little guy, right? So I think the Sonos inside is genius. Knut, you bought the IKEA. So you go to IKEA yourself. Who cuts that deal? Who puts that deal together? You have a biz dev team, or do you as a CEO have to just plant the seed?
So that was very hard. I had to ultimately push that through the organization because, as you might imagine, culturally, we'd only to that point built our own products. And it was a bit sacrilege to say, we're going to go help IKEA build products. And we're going to take, the board that goes and inside it. And here's why, because it'll expand the number of homes that we're in. Those people buy more, they'll buy Sonos products and go through it. So that's such a cultural change and strategy change that it has to be driven by the CEO. And there's a business development team that went and executed it, and our product team got behind it. But that is one where there's just no way without the without the CEO weighing in on that's going to happen at all. So that's a big one. And that's, again, that notion of exploring, what you do today may not be what you do in the future. And how else do you leverage kind of like all of the capabilities and assets that you're building at an organization? This has been a really interesting way, and it's got into, because we largely are in North America and Western Europe. This got us into a whole bunch of new countries, into a whole bunch of new price points, because IKEA can build these things and build huge volumes at lower price point. And then into these new form factors like lamps and, picture frames and some cool stuff that they're working on for the future. So So it's been a really interesting partnership. And I'm not sure, Howard, like I don't think I would have done it. And I don't think I would have had the conviction to do it
If you
I
hadn't seen
hadn't
what
lived through the BlackBerry.
BlackBerry did
Yeah,
wrong.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one of those things that I'm like, no, this is one of those things we need to try because of really, the experience that I've had in the past.
And so, Knut, do you still have your Nokia? Have you switched to Apple yet?
Yeah, I framed it.
So, yeah, you should put some sound around that frame. So when you walked into IKEA, and first everybody's like, oh, there's a tall guy coming in. But when you walked into IKEA, did you know what Sonos was?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I've known of Sonos for years.
Okay, so when you walked into IKEA, you saw you saw a Sonos section?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you have to have the app.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, so you have Sonos.
I have Sonos.
Got it. Yeah, genius. So that makes sense. Is Sonos also have a corp dev team to be on the lookout for other things that could expand it, or it's just audio and no corp dev out there?
No, absolutely. We have corp dev out there. We've acquired a few smaller companies, and I think that's a key part. We have about $700 million on the balance sheet right now. So
Oh, wow.
we are out there shaking, the branches for, ways to add talent, ways to drive growth with new products and new services as well. But I will tell you, like it hasn't, I think this is just indicative of where we are these days. There's just not a lot of other companies out there, right, that you would necessarily be picking up and going through, right?
Bose?
Yeah.
Bose has the stores, but it's kind of sad to walk. Well, not that I go to stores anymore or anybody. Sonos, did you ever get trapped in doing a retail store? I can't remember if Sonos has a retail store.
We did one in New York City that we subsequently have closed.
Was it in Soho or something? I'm trying to remember where
Yeah, it was Soho. That's exactly right. It was in Soho.
So that was smart.
Yeah, well, but what we've learned through this and exactly, and then through the pandemic, like the number one driver of someone new coming to Sonos is a friend or family member telling them to get Sonos. So that is still the number one reason somebody joins Sonos. And it's not going into like a room and listening to it and doing all of the things that sometimes if you step back, you think like what the buying process will be, but it's largely the referrals and wanting to be part of the community kind of that we've built and like what we stand for as a brand. And so like I am so proud, and this is why we put so much into R&D, of the fact that the main, that the leading reason that people still come into Sonos is they heard from an existing customer how great their Sonos is. So that continues to be like kind of our North Star in terms of how we drive the whole flywheel of Sonos.
And so I'm trying to just act like a corp dev who's just learning. So couldn't you do more pop-up stores, don't you think, and collabs?
Yeah, we're definitely gonna play. As the world reopens, we're gonna play with some more formats. We also have products now, right, that go beyond the home. So we did a partnership with North Face to go do exploring and bring music with you and all this kind of stuff. So we're gonna try a whole bunch of other collabs, and we'll try some other ways to show up in the world. And in surprising places. And if you look now, a lot of restaurants and coffee shops, like they're getting Sonos as well. And so we think there's both opportunity to bring great music and make it easy for those businesses, but at the same time, another place for consumers to see us in action, right? And be like, oh, look at that, Sonos. And so there's just a lot of opportunity out there, for us. And so we're looking at all across all of the areas of audio. And, we really want to show up in all these places. And it's like the IKEA partnership. We're about the sound experience and like, where can we bring sound to some surprising places that maybe it hasn't shown up before?
Now, I don't pay Sonos. So is there a subscription Sonos that's potential or no? It's just a one-time hardware sale.
Yeah, I mean, it's not one time. So this is the biggest thing that I guess I haven't done a good enough job really helping investors understand. But we have such a unique business model in the sense that people come and buy a product, but they come back and add more over time. So last year, 46% of our sales went to existing customers coming back and adding another Sonos product, not replacing one, adding another one. And last year, we got up to 3 products per home. So we now average 3 products in the over 12 million homes that we have. And that's almost like an annuity. So even the group, the first year we shipped products was 2005. Even last year, those, part of that cohort came back and added an additional Sonos product. And so there is an annuity there in the sense that, we know if somebody starts with 1 or 2, they're going to add more over time. And we think we can get people much higher than 3. We think we should be, getting up into the 6 range, right, in terms of where we think we can get people. And I think that total number, the lifetime value, is only limited by our imagination, right, and what other areas we can go into and other products that we can create for people. So that's one focus. And then the other focus is obviously bringing new people into Sonos. And like I said, our number one resource for that is those existing customers telling their friends and family. But then obviously we do marketing efforts and, all the digital stuff, and we go after that. And so we have this flywheel that's very unique in our space, which is it's not a one and done purchase. It's something that people come back and add more over time. And so we know, this year, 45% of our sales will come from existing customers coming back and adding another one, which is pretty powerful.
And that's e-commerce mostly then from your own site. Or who's your biggest, Amazon, or is it your own site?
No, it's our own site, and we announced, that's about a quarter. So that went up from, where was it, like 3 years ago? It was in the kind of the 9-10% range, and now it's about a quarter of our business. And
but that should be 50% soon, right?
Look, I think remember we have
retail distribution.
We have retail distribution across Best Buy, Costco, players like that. But we also have a pretty big business with what we call the installed solutions channel, which is those people that are going around to houses and installing this stuff. Sonos dominates in that channel now because we're so reliable. So people know they can go and install it, and they don't have to worry about like going back there, right? The last thing the person that installs audio and video in your home wants to do is have to go back and troubleshoot stuff and all of that. Customers love it. Installers love it. And so that's a big chunk of our business as well.
So then the next question is supply chain. So what's like remote work? And I'll let you go, but like remote work supply chain, how does China factor in this, or where's the product made mostly?
So when the geopolitical stuff happened, a couple of years ago, we accelerated our diversification plan. So we'd been 100% China. We've brought up Malaysia subsequent to that. So that's a big chunk and doing a lot of our production for North America. Obviously, the last couple of years have been supply chain hell. I mean, it's always a challenge. There's always something going wrong in supply chain, but it's become a headline issue, as you well know, over the last couple of years. And our team's done a tremendous job in navigating that. And so we've been able to continue to drive growth. We've had a backlog, every quarter. So we haven't caught up to it. But I do think the worst is behind us now. We're seeing improving supply chain conditions for us, at least, and the kind of chips and everything that we wanted, that we need to get product to our customers. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's been a period where we've executed better than most because our engineering team will do things like re-engineer the boards that are inside products, like for components that are available to replace those that aren't. And we had to do a whole bunch of creative things that you don't usually have to do. But I think companies like ourselves and Apple have navigated this a little better because we've invested it over the years in supply chain, and and it's a core competence of what we do. On the remote work front, since we started simultaneously in Santa Barbara and Boston, we've always had to deal with distributed work and how teams work across different locations. And so when the pandemic struck and we ended up everybody working from home, we were able to adapt pretty well, quite frankly. And you see this in our results, and the team's done an amazing job. We've continued to launch our 2 new products a year during that period. The team's figured out how to do testing in their homes. We've safely opened like our labs and some of the hardware stuff that's there. But I will tell you, we have 1,719 of the most amazing people that you will find. And so since we've been so rigorous in, hiring and performance of the people that we have, we basically said, have a conversation with your manager and figure out how you can be most effective going forward as we reopen offices. And we will go from 15% of people working from home pre-pandemic to probably about 60% of people working from home post-pandemic. And I think we'll be more effective as a result. We've been able to add way more people in other cities in the United States. So we're tapping into talent pools we couldn't before. And, I think through this whole period of people reevaluating their lives, coming to work for a company that you can be proud of what you build and is an underdog, like you said, and, is a little more focused on building for the long term, than just maybe you being a cog in the wheel, is an advantage for us. So we've been able to pick up some really interesting and talented people that give me a lot of hope for the future, quite frankly. And so we will look different coming out of the pandemic. We'll be working differently. And I also think that anybody who says they know what's going to happen in a year or two, they don't know. And so I want to be humble about the fact too that, this is the kind of configuration we're in today. We'll figure it out, right, as we get into this and see how hybrid works and how work from home really works for people as we get into more normalized conditions, and we will adapt accordingly. That's the biggest thing that's important here, is figuring out, how to build an organization that is adaptable, because ultimately that creates a company that will endure for the long term.
And so, yeah, fantastic. So how many employees today?
1,719.
And how many open positions are there right now?
Oh, probably 200, 300.
How hard is recruiting right now? It seems like everybody has 200 open recs.
Yeah, it is one of those times. And a lot of those are in software, hardware engineering. We're doing pretty well. Our attrition is under 10% and is where it has stayed steady in the pandemic. So I don't feel like we're getting hit with the great resignation, knock on wood as we go through this. I think we built a place that people want to work. But yeah, like definitely trying to find all of the talent's pretty tough. But I feel like we're going to win out against a lot because of our, what we call intentional flexibility, this ability to work from home, and then our culture and, the fact that we're building amazing products that people are proud of. So, these things take some time, obviously, to go and do well, but I'm pretty optimistic we'll be able to add some amazing people over the next few months and, keep building and bring out some even more exciting products in the future.
Well, Sonos is an incredible brand. Love you can spell it backwards. It's Sonos. It's really amazing, like how durable, because it was not easy. I remember reading tech stuff about it in the early days, just following the story, and it was just such a battle.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And then I go look at the stock price and I go, that's pretty amazing that you could build that company through this and to create something this durable. And now there's just so much opportunity, like you said.
That's right.
There's just so much opportunity. And so I think I really appreciate learning about this industry. The Blackberry story is incredible. I'm excited about the company as a user. I will definitely tell my friends. And it's great to have a fellow Canadian kicking butt. Do you go home much or no?
I do, and actually our kids made a decision. So we got a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school, and they made the decision to go back to Canada to finish high school in the midst of the pandemic. So we go back there and see them, and all our family's back in Canada. So we get back there at Christmas and usually in the summer to hit, cottage as well. So yeah, well, I'm proudly Canadian. But I also feel like, I've had such great opportunities here in the United States. It's a pretty amazing place, and Santa Barbara is a phenomenal place to live as well. So just very grateful for the journey and everything Canada's, given me, and everything, all the opportunities the United States has provided as well. So I feel very fortunate.
Yeah, it's just an amazing, and you're in cottage country up in Ontario.
Yeah.
It's the best. All right. Well, I look forward to our next conversation. Tremendous job at Sonos and incredible stories. And it's an incredible business. Music's a fun business to be in.
It is.
So be well, and we'll have you back soon, and go Sonos.
Thanks, Howard. Appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
Hey, Knut.
Hey.
Sonos.
God, that product's amazing.
High energy, too, huh? Good leader.
Oh, yeah. Reminds me of Matthew Prince.
Yeah, he knows, obviously, C100, so he knows Michelle.
Okay.
She's Canadian as well, running Cloudflare. So, exactly. When you talk to a great leader, it just exudes.
Yep.
And it's not easy. I got to think every day he wakes up and he goes, Apple, Google. And then he did that with Blackberry, and obviously Qualcomm and Microsoft teaming up against Blackberry. So, the land of giants. It is not easy out there. But that is kind of one of those brands where fashion meets technology that I just was dying to meet him. I know him through Twitter, so we've only chatted a few times. But obviously an incredible leader and building an incredible company. I forget the ticker, but anyway, Sonos.com. Knut?
Yes?
You've got your Sonos.
Yes, I do.
And what about, is there any podcast stuff we could do Sonos with or no?
I'll look into it.
Well, you are listening to Panic with Friends, where Knut and I sit down, chat amongst ourselves, forget that people are listening, and have great guests like Patrick, who are founders, entrepreneurs, leaders, CEOs, venture capitalists, traders, just trying to help people understand trends out there and get a little bit ahead of the curve. You can go to Apple, Spotify, Google, search my name, Howard Lindzen, subscribe to Panic with Friends, and once a week you will get a alert and a podcast like this. Have a great day, Knut. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Howard Lindzen is the founder and general partner at Social Leverage. All opinions expressed by Howard and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Social Leverage or StockTwits. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for decisions. Guests may maintain positions in securities discussed in this podcast.